My cardiologist at the time, he was very insistent. He's like, "There's something going on here. There's something tying it all together. There's too many one-off features. There's gotta be something." So he really pushed for me to get seen by genetics.
Welcome to Heart with Anna. I am Anna Jaworski and the mother of an adult with a single ventricle heart. That's the reason I'm the host of your program. Today's guest is Gwenyth Murphy, and she is a second generation congenital heart defect survivor. She was born in 1977 in Neenah, Wisconsin, with third-degree AV block. She was also diagnosed with a bicuspid aortic valve and cardiomyopathy as an adult. Gwenyth is married to Joe, has a son named Tyler, and two cats, Oreo and Taz. She enjoys photography, various fiber arts, and other creative outlets. She is currently working on finishing her mother Sharon's last project, a cookbook of family recipes. Gwenyth is also a contributor to my latest book series, The Heart of a Heart Warrior, where she talked about growing up with a mother who had a heart defect and how she and her mother lived their lives with CHD. Today, we're going to talk to Gwenyth about a different condition she also has, which may be the cause of her congenital heart defect. Welcome to Heart with Anna, Gwenyth.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so happy to have you on the program, and I want to start by briefly talking about your heart condition and the treatments that you've had so far.
The heart condition I have is a rare one. It's called complete heart block, which means the upper chamber and the lower chamber don't communicate to each other. So that meant that as a kid, my heart rate was in the low 40s and 30s until I got a pacemaker, which I got that about 10 days before I went off to college when I was 18. And I'm actually awaiting my fourth device now. And that will be on August 27th. So I've had three devices. Each one has been a little bit different. The first two were dual chamber, which means there's leads in the upper and lower chambers of the heart. My last one, they upgrade to a CRT device, which means that there's a lead in the right ventricle, the left ventricle, and the right atrium.
Oh,
And
wow. So there's three
so,
leads instead of just two.
yep. And this next device, they're hoping to abandon one lead and add a fourth one that's going to be what they call conduction system pacing. It's a new style of pacing, which was supposed to use a more natural heart rhythm. A lot of times with pacemakers, they're not really synced up because of the wires. So this new style of pacing is supposed to solve that issue. So we'll see. Hopefully it does.
Interesting. So you said abandon one, but add a fourth, but really that would still be three, right? You
Yeah,
would still have three active leads.
I believe so. Yeah.
Interesting. So you're seeing the history of electrophysiology. I mean, you're one of the pioneers. You're making it happen or you're going along with it while it's happening.
Yep. Pretty much. The last time I was in the office, I actually looked at the chart in my EP's office that's like all the different devices. And I thought they just kind of been waiting as long as they could. But then I was looking at this chart and they really didn't have a device that would fit me until like 1989. So that makes sense why they waited so long.
Oh,
With all the ones before
wow.
that were much too big for my body type. So it would have been a huge mess. Luckily, yeah, I have what they call an escape rhythm, so I was able to wait as long as humanly possible to get that device done.
Right. I had David Franco on my show years ago, and he was a little boy when he got his first pacemaker. And as a little boy, there's no way he could put a pacemaker where an adult normally would. So it
Right.
ended up in his stomach and it in
Yep.
his
Yeah,
abdomen
that's what they
area.
do. Yeah, that's what they do for some of the younger patients I know that have complete heart block. They have it first in their stomach and then they move it when they get older up under the collarbone.
Right. That's what
Um,
David had happened too. Is that how it went for you? Or since you were
uh,
an adult, were they able to put it under the clavicle to begin with?
they were able to put it under the clavicle to begin with, which is lucky.
Yeah.
Not everybody's so lucky. As I said, I had that underlying rhythm, which wasn't synchronous, but it's like that backup pace around your ventricles. It kind of kicked in, and that's what allowed me to stay so long without getting the device. Wasn't greatest because my heart rate was in the 30s and 40s, which isn't
So
all that good,
low.
but
Yeah.
functional. So
It's amazing to me that you were able to survive with your heart rate being that low, but I remember from your story that you wrote for The Heart of a Heart Warrior, that you talked about pretty much just surviving while you were in high school. You would go to school and you would come home and sleep and sleep and sleep until you had to go
Pretty much.
back to school again. No wonder if your heart rate was that low that that's
Yep.
all you could really do.
Yep, pretty much. As a kid, I think I slept average of 14 to 16 hours a night. It really was just a matter of keep going until they had the technology that would do better for me. So,
Right.
which
Right.
nowadays I don't think they would do that. I think they would just do it right away. But back then it was more of a we'll wait as long as possible and then we'll do it. Or that's what they did.
I think that all doctors and hospitals are a little bit different, and it's a cost benefits analysis. And
Right.
what is the risk versus the benefit? And when you're dealing with somebody who's so small, it's a really scary risk that you take. So I understand if you had this escape rhythm, them thinking, oh, let's just hold on a little bit longer. And look at what's happening now with medical technology and the advancements that we have. It seems like overnight they're coming up with new technology to help people. So if you had been born today, things would be so different.
That's definitely true. I mean, when I think they started really considering it as when I was about 12, and then every year they kind of look at it again. But as long as I was functioning, they weren't in any hurry. But then obviously I would not have been able to function in college if I didn't have a device. There'd have been no way
No,
I would have been
no,
able
it
to.
doesn't sound like you would have been able to have any quality of life much longer.
Right, exactly. And a very nice nurse practitioner, I think, finally was like, you do understand it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. She was like, the sooner you do it, the better probably would be. And she kind of had that little bit of a heart to heart talk with me. I was like, okay. And my mom, she's had the surgeries, and she was like, this is your body, so you need to decide when you're ready for it, which I really appreciate her letting me take control of that because a lot of kids don't get that control.
No, they don't. And I think your mom had a more in-depth understanding since she herself had a heart defect
Yes.
and she wanted to be as considerate of you as she could be. That's a tough decision for a teenager to make. Who wants to feel that they need a device in their body?
Right.
I mean, I don't think anybody does, but I think it's even harder when you're a teenager and you want to be just like everybody else, even if you know you're not just like everybody else.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I think I did it at the right time for me. I think younger it wouldn't have worked out as well for me. I think I chose the right time to do it, and I think everything came full circle at the right time because I was able to take advantage of the newest technology. Because between like 89 and 95, there wasn't much development done. So I was able to take advantage of that technological jump by waiting that little bit of extra time
Sure.
too, which in the long run has made things, I think, easier or better for me.
It's good. It's interesting sometimes how things just have a way of working out the way they're supposed to.
Yep.
Heart to Heart with Anna is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the Hug Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a non-profit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to uplift, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at www.congenitalheartdefects.com for information about CHD, the hospitals that treat children with CHD, summer camps for CHD survivors, and much, much more.
Embark on a heartwarming odyssey with Baby Heart's Pressure Gateway to uplifting stories for the CHD community. Introducing the Heart of a Heart Warrior book series, inspiring those born with heart defects and their loved ones. Discover the heart of a mother, the heart of a father, and my brother needs an operation. Books celebrating strength, love, and familial support. Visit babyheartspress.com and be part of our loving community, uplifting hearts one story at a time.
You are listening to Heart with Anna. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our show, please send an email to Anna Jaworski at anna@hearttoheartwithanna.com. That's anna@hearttoheartwithanna.com. Now, back to Heart with Anna.
Gwenyth, I mentioned at the top of the show that you had written for my book, The Heart of a Heart Warrior. And in the book, you went into a lot of detail about your mother's heart condition. But for my listeners who haven't read the book yet, can you tell us a little bit about your mom's condition and how it was treated?
She got congenitally corrected transposition of the great vessels. For her, they knew when she was an infant that she had something wrong, but they couldn't figure out what it was because the
Right.
technology wasn't quite there yet. And she'd had a cardiac cath, and she'd always saw a cardiologist every year, but it wasn't until she was in her mid-20s that they finally figured out what exactly the heart defect she had was, which was a CCTGA. And she had all the what you called bells and whistles with it. So she had the ASD, the BSD. Some of the valves were a little bit weird. They were not fully functioning valves. So she had her open heart surgery in 1976. During that surgery, they closed her ASD, but they left the BSD alone because it was working for her,
Sure.
which is kind of weird how that works, but it was working for her. So they let it alone, and they were supposed to close the two holes, and then they were supposed to do something with the valves, and they ended up just closing the ASD because whatever was with the valves was working for her. She kind of kept going and going, and then I think probably around the time I was in high school, she had a cardiologist tell her, "Oh, I don't know what else to do for you, so you just keep doing whatever it is that you're doing." Well, that's what she did. And then as I got older and started having more issues, I found that there was a whole new specialty just for us adults. And I
Mhm.
was able to convince her to go back and see a cardiologist.
And when you did that, you discovered that you had another condition you didn't know about, didn't you?
Yes, it took a few tries. And then the doctor finally said, "Oh, my aortic valve is a bicuspid valve, but it's
Mhm.
kind of a weird bicuspid valve. There's technically three leaflets, but the one is undersized and attached to the other one. So it functions as a bicuspid valve, even though
Okay.
it has two normal leaflets and one underdeveloped leaflet. And because it's connected to the other one, it functions as a bicuspid valve. So that was
Amazing.
kind of interesting learning that. I'm like, I thought all I had was this electrical thing, but nope, I also have the structural. So,
You poor thing. You have a little bit of everything, don't you? But then
yep.
we learned at the top of the program as well that you have a different condition and that possibly this condition is what accounts for your heart conditions. Can you tell us what myotonic dystrophy is and how you received that diagnosis and the first
Well,
signs of that?
yes. So myotonic dystrophy is a class of muscular dystrophy. It's a little bit more uncommon one. There's three types that they know of. There's a fourth that they're researching, I think. So there's a congenital form, a type 1, and a type 2. So it is a form of muscular dystrophy, but it doesn't always appear until you're older. But in doing mine, they realized I have a congenital form of it, just a more mild version. So I didn't really start having issues with it until I got to be an adult, at least noticeable issues. But when you go back and look at childhood, it was pretty clear that there were issues then too. It just everything was put kind of under the heart defect issue.
Sure.
They-
Yeah.
Everything was
That
kind of
that
labeled as
totally
part
makes
of that.
sense. Yeah,
So
yeah.
like the low muscle tone and delayed speech and all that kind of stuff, they just figured it was part of the heart condition. But that may not have been the case.
So you
So
said you
it's
had low muscle tone and what else?
a low muscle tone, late to speak. I think I was almost 2 before I started speaking and almost 2 before I started walking. And then as I got into college, I started having a lot of trouble with TMJ, really, really, really bad TMJ. When they went to the oral surgeon for that, they told us, well, this has been an issue for a long time, but you must have just gotten used to it. Because at
Mhm.
that point, they realized that the muscles in the jaw weren't working, and neither was the cartilage that's in the jaw was completely worn away as well.
Oh
So,
my
they're
goodness, it
like
was
yeah, they're
completely
like,
worn away?
this has been going on for years and years. You must have just gotten used to it until it became a critical point. At that point, I couldn't eat food or anything like that. I was basically drinking broth because I couldn't eat any food
Oh
because my
my
mouth hurt so bad.
gosh.
So
Wow.
later on, after we figured out that it was this kind of muscular dystrophy thing going on, it was like, oh, well, that's why. That's the reason for the TMJ. That's the reason for having a little muscle tone and not really having any strength and that kind of stuff.
I
So,
can see why that might have been overlooked previously because you were really on survival mode and you were spending so much time sleeping. you wouldn't have had a whole lot of opportunities to see some of these issues.
Right, exactly, and some of them didn't really pop up until later on. As far as being diagnosed with it is after I had my son, I got really, really sick. I ended up septic shock, and nearly died. But after that, I was very unwell, and it was kind of a, "Why am I not getting better?" So I think that kinda triggers some of the more latent issues that come along with the muscular dystrophy portion of it. Because then all of a sudden I really was having pain with muscles every time I was using them and things like that. Probably if I hadn't had my son, hadn't gotten so sick, they probably never would have realized that this is what it is until either further down the line or when I was really sick from it, because it brought all those underlying things that I'd been used to up front, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
So, the medical community knows that myotonic dystrophy is genetic. So, do you know if
Yes.
anyone else in your family has been diagnosed with that condition? Or maybe you suspect, oh, I bet that person had this too.
I did a lot of the genetic testing after both my mom and my dad had passed away, so I'm not really sure, but
Yeah.
it's entirely possible. It would make sense, yeah, if a few other people also had this muscular issue. Looking back through history, it would kind of explain some of the things that have been chalked up as autoimmune issues because it can kind of masquerade as autoimmune sort of a thing.
Oh, okay.
Um, so, a lot of people at first are like, "Oh, I'm having trouble with this," and it's not uncommon for it to be misdiagnosed first as like a myasthenia gravis. That's
Oh,
often a
hmm,
first misdiagnosis because it presents a lot of the same sort of things, fatigue and muscle pain and brain fogs, that kind of stuff. So,
wow. And it sounds like what some of my friends who have fibromyalgia complain of as well.
that could be. I went through like 5 different things before they finally figured out that this is what it is after I saw a genetic specialist. And you match every single clinical feature of this. So send the genetics off and see what that says.
And so, did that doctor say to you that, okay, now we know because of the issues that you've been having all your life, now we know that it's this myotonic dystrophy. Is that the doctor who said, oh my goodness, this could be what caused your heart condition?
My cardiologist at the time, he was very insistent. He was like, "There is something going on here. There's something tying it all together. There's too many one-off features. There's got to be something." So he really pushed for me to get seen by genetics. One of the first things for some people that shows up as they get older is all of a sudden they develop a heart block. That's one of the things that is how you know you might
Oh,
have this myotonic thing is the heart block because it's not uncommon at all for it to develop in your 30s or 40s. And then all of a sudden you're wondering, well, why do I have this? And then if you have a doctor that keeps pushing and trying to figure out why did this patient all of a sudden have this, it's one of the most common symptoms of the myotonic is developing heart block later in life.
This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed in the podcast are not those of Hearts Unite the Globe, but of the hosts and guests, and are intended to spark discussion about issues pertaining to congenital heart disease or bereavement.
Gwyneth, you've dealt with so much, my dear, so much. Living with a mother who has a heart defect, having a heart defect yourself, then discovering, oh my goodness, it's not just a heart defect, but it's also this other condition, which is a form of muscular dystrophy. You've been such a good advocate for yourself. Can you give me some advice that you would give to other CHDers who think that they are also experiencing other symptoms that are maybe not heart related?
Don't be afraid to get a second opinion. Or if you think I'm having all these muscular issues, don't be afraid to make an appointment with a neurologist yourself. Because a lot of times people get hung up on, well, there's this issue, we know there's this issue, and then they don't want to look further. So it's really
Yeah.
important to be like, okay, I know myself that there's some other reason that all this is happening. So if you think you have a muscular issue, go see a neurologist. They can pinpoint it. It took a lot of years. It probably took me about 10 years to figure out what exactly it was
Wow.
that was causing the issues. So you've
Okay.
gotta be persistent, and I wouldn't say go around to all different doctors because then you get a reputation or well, I've heard that sometimes they'll see that and then they kind of brush you off.
Well,
So if
because they may be afraid
yeah,
that you're a hypochondriac, but you had distinct issues that you were dealing with. And it
right.
sounds to me like your cardiologist really took to heart the problems and the complaints that you had, and that he's the one who actually pushed for you. So,
Yes. He did push a lot for me, which I'm very grateful for. I mean, he pushed for me for this. He pushed for me for the bleeding issue that I have that nobody else was believing me that I have some sort of bleeding issue because this is not supposed to be happening after every minor procedures or I'm not supposed to be getting these random bruises. This is not normal. So I guess, yeah, it's find a doctor that will listen to you. And if your doctor doesn't listen to you, don't be afraid to get a second opinion because sometimes they get stuck in their ways. I mean, that happens to everybody sometimes. Or for some of the pediatric patients that are now adults, that doctor has seen them for 20 years already. A new set of eyes might be needed. My primary care physician was a really great doctor, but wasn't really willing to look past all the things that were already known. Whereas my cardiologist is like,
yeah.
there's something going on here. He's a really good guy. If your doctor's not listening to you, find a new one. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to go get a new one. Don't be afraid to go get a second opinion. Don't be afraid to be like, no, that kind of annoying patient. I know there's something going on here.
Well, it's
Please
a
help me find
squeaky
the
wheel
problem.
that gets oiled. So, yes, you have to be that squeaky wheel sometimes. That's one of the things I loved about the Heart of a Heart Warrior was we had a number of people who, just like you, they knew they had other issues. People weren't listening to them. Jessica Carmel did a wonderful job about talking about the issues she had with her gallbladder. And good heavens, it took her 2 years before finally somebody believed her and said, "Well, look, all of your tests come back normal, but you're still having all these issues. Let's just take the gallbladder out." And when they did, sure enough, there was an issue there. So I think you're right. Sometimes you have to really push, you have to be willing to change doctors and not think that it's all in your head. I think that's one of the
Yes,
problems.
it's one of the biggest hurdles to overcome. Even now that I haven't been feeling very well for probably, I don't know, since September, so probably a year now. My cardiologist now, also very good. And she's like, I don't quite know what the issue is, but I know there's something. So she happily referred me over to another specialist. And now they're looking at all the reasons why I might be feeling yucky right now. You got to find that team that does not dismiss you or think that they know everything just because they're the doctors. Sometimes the patient knows best. You really do.
Yeah.
Or it's really not all in their heads. You really, really don't feel good. Sometimes there's big hospitals that are known for their care, but
Mhm.
sometimes you got to go to the slightly littler guy and they're going to be more willing to look maybe for Libras instead of horses.
Well, I think the interesting thing there is that sometimes when you go to a smaller hospital, they don't have quite as many patients they have to see every single day, and they will actually take time with you. Whereas some of the bigger hospitals, and I'm just saying some of the bigger hospitals, folks, I'm not discounting all big hospitals, but
Right.
I have seen with some of the bigger hospitals that they have so many patients that they have to see, and you end up getting put on wait lists because there are so many patients that are needing to be seen that they pretty much want to get you in and out quickly. And they don't have the time to spend to really address issues that you may have. So if it's not something that's life threatening, you may feel intimidated to even bring it up with the doctor.
Right. I go to Children's Wisconsin, which is a very good hospital. And I also go to the next door adult hospital, Fader, which is also a very good hospital. They're not huge, not tiny, it's not huge, but it's kind of in that sweet spot where it's big enough that they have all the stuff they need, but it's not super small either. And I think, especially for cardiac reasons, I can't say enough for Children's Wisconsin because they really do a good job in their clinic.
That's
They
so good to hear.
And I know they're not on a lot of lists because they are a little bit smaller of a hospital, but I think people discount them sometimes, and they really shouldn't because they're very good with what they do, especially on the cardiac side of things for adults and for kids.
That's good to hear. So, what role do you think genetic testing should play in the life of a person with a serious heart condition?
I think some people don't like genetics because they don't trust. the genetics, but I think being willing to be that, for lack of a better word, lab rat and have your genetics tested, it can only help future generations because myotonic dystrophy wasn't even identified on a gene until like the mid 90s. There's things
Mhm.
now they're still trying to figure out what gene is causing it. So for me, it's not a bad thing to see if they can get a genetic test done, a full panel done. Because at the very worst, you're just going to help out somebody else in the future because they're going to be able to see, oh, now all these people have this
Mhm.
genetic marker that we thought was a variant of unknown significance. Now all of a sudden, all these people have this variant. Now we know that
Mhm.
it's connected to this particular illness.
Yeah, I agree with you there 100%. So were they able to provide you with some kind of treatment after they diagnosed the
Uh,
myotonic dystrophy?
yes and no. It's kind of one of those ones that's also kind of rare. So everybody's still trying to figure out what works for it. I am able to get stuff for the muscle pains or the muscle aches or when my muscles are stiff. There's a medication I can take now that they gave me. Each short version, yes. Now I have a plan. So now I know if I go in for hospital visits or something like that, that they need to be aware of the myotonic dystrophy, which can sometimes, if you have a cardiac surgery or another surgery, it can affect how they do anesthesia and things like that.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
I mean, if it's slam, why I've always used a bit more of the anesthesia than they think I do. I'm not
Mm.
sure though if that's why or if that's just some other thing, but it helps overall because it gives them something to rule out if am not feeling well. They can say, well, is it this? Is it this? And now they can also try the different medications, see what will help me if I get the muscle pain and the muscle cramps and the stiffness and all that kind of stuff.
So is there physical therapy they can do to help you with that?
Yeah, I have done physical therapy. As long as they try and keep the muscles loose and it prevents stiffening.
Mhm.
So I did do physical therapy for about 10 weeks and I have a whole list of exercises to do at home. Their goal is to make sure that you can do it at home.
Sure.
So they gave me all the equipment I needed, like the bands,
Mhm.
resistance bands and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, as long as I do 10, 15 minutes of those a day, that helps keep everything loosened up and I don't get as stiff. If
That's
I'm like going
great.
out to yeah, if I'm going out to a festival or something though, either I have to recognize that I'm gonna have a really stiff back and really stiff muscles and have trouble getting in the car on the way home, or I have to kind of suck it up and have someone bring some sort of mobility device, like a wheelchair or something, so that I don't get as stiff
Wow.
in the floor. So, which that takes a lot to kind of get over.
It does. I think
I've been willing to do
mentally, it's so
so.
hard mentally and emotionally. I mean, you're a young woman and your mom instilled this can-do attitude in you from the very beginning. So to all of a
Exactly.
sudden think, well, I can do the festival, but I might have to do it in a wheelchair. I can just picture your mom saying, no, get out of that chair. You could do it. 'Cause she had that
Yeah,
can-do attitude, but I'm sure if she would have known, "Oh my goodness, my daughter has this form of muscular dystrophy," she would have been understanding, and she would have just been happy for you to be out in the fresh air.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and enjoying the festivals because that was such an important part of your life with her.
Yes, exactly. So, again, keep telling myself, it'll all be fine. It's just everybody gets overwhelmed and you just gotta work through it.
But you're doing the right things. You have doctors right now who are trying to get to the root cause. Instead of just
Yep.
treating your symptoms, they're trying to get to the root cause of it and treat that, which I think is amazing. Now, you
Yep.
know that this is an inherited disease. Is this something that you worry about for Tyler or any of your other family members?
I don't worry about it for Tyler because they screened him when they screened me, and he doesn't have the genetic disposition for it.
Oh,
So
good.
that part is good. So
Wow.
it's one
And
of those 50-50 one with like Huntington's disease, which is like a 50-50 chance. So we lost out on that one. But
mm,
at this point, I'm an only child. All of my uncles are in their late 50s and 60s. So if it was going to pop up for them, it probably would have by now. It could have just been a spontaneous thing. I don't know. I can't really say for sure.
mhm. Or maybe something recessive. Your family
Right.
had it a long time ago, but it wasn't expressed, but it was carried along.
It's technically supposed to be a dominant gene, but I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, it's supposed to be a
Interesting.
dominant. My mom had the exact same body build as I do, so it's possible that she also has some form of it. I don't know. I really can't say for sure.
Did
Other
she
than,
ever
yeah.
complain of some of the symptoms that you had? Did she ever complain about being sore?
No, I mean, we have in our family something we call the Murphy bath, which everybody's backs goes out and they can't move for like days. So, I mean, that could be why
Wow.
that could go along with it. I don't know, but it's kind of a running joke in our family that they get the Murphy bath and then all of a sudden you can't move again for days because your back is just completely locked up. So that could be what the Murphy back is.
Ah.
I don't know.
I remember reading in your story in The Heart of a Heart Warrior that your mom was so good at, we're going to do this and then we're going to take a rest. And she was really good at pacing herself. And who knows, maybe part of that was that she was starting to feel stiff. Her joints or her muscles would start to feel stiff, and she knew she had to relax or else she couldn't move on.
Yeah, I don't know. There's always been something that even for very little, we'll do a little bit, we'll stop, take a break, do a little bit, take a break. It's just learning how to pace from a very early age so that even as an adult trying to get stuff done, I don't really have a problem pacing myself. And I'm really
Yeah.
good with it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And oh well, it's just gonna have to wait. So I mean that's just how it goes sometimes. Mhm.
Exactly. That is so true, and that's definitely something that you learn as you get older. I think people, when they're younger, can be very impatient and, "No, I have to have it done yesterday," but you've learned a very important life lesson as a young woman.
Yeah. I think so. It's so important to pace yourself because it's not worth feeling too much and then you can't enjoy yourself for several days. I've definitely been on that end of things too, where I've just pushed and pushed and pushed and then I'm out of commission for 3, 4 days and it doesn't help anybody. So it's better just to pace yourself and do what you can
Right.
do. And if people can't appreciate that, then that's a them problem, not a you problem. So
I love that. That's
I
so
mean,
true. Yes.
which is my mom taught me too. If people can't handle that, that's on them. That's nothing to do with you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Gwyneth, I can't believe our time is up already. This went by so fast. I have never heard of myotonic dystrophy until you told me about it. So I'm really glad we had a chance to bring this to light because who knows? There could be other people out there in the CHC community who have been experiencing these same symptoms and just didn't know that this may be partially what has caused their heart condition. So thank you so much for coming on the program and explaining it to us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Well, friends, that does conclude this episode of Heart to Heart with Anna. Thanks for listening today. Please consider becoming a patron of our program by visiting www.patreon.com/heart to heart. And remember, my friends, you are not alone.
Thank you again for joining us this week. We hope you have become inspired and empowered to become an advocate for the congenital heart community. Heart to Heart with Anna with your host, Anna Jaworski, can be heard at any time wherever you get your podcasts. A new episode is released every Tuesday from noon Eastern Time.